it can absolutely be your saving grace because at the end of the day, it's all going to come down to oxygenation. That's the prime thing that much of our bodies are running on. And you can even look at it in performance and research, where you look at the athletes that train and they have good optimal oxygenation, nasal breathers predominantly, and not mouth breathing, nasal breathing, they will perform better. The myofunctional therapy is really going to teach you how to use these muscles so that you can optimize your function.
Are you done with being that pregnant or postpartum mom in the gym who is always stuck on the sidelines feeling horrible, saying, "How come no one ever told me this?" Are you ready to finally say no to a mom life filled with excess weight, injury, overwhelm, and fatigue? Then help is here. Welcome to the Strong Moms Fitness Podcast, where we dive deep into the information you need to be the strongest woman in and out of the gym, even if you are a mom. If you are done going through your pregnancy or postpartum fitness journey clueless and unprepared, if you are ready to commit and say yes to being that badass fit mom who is shredded and stronger than before the baby, well, listen up. Because this is where we talk about all of the things your doctor or trainer never told you about, so that you can achieve the body you want and take your athletic strength and performance to the next level. Get ready, because here's your host, Daisy
and
Bravo.
welcome to another episode of the Strong Moms Fitness Podcast. I know that you are going to want to stick around for this. This has probably been one of the most interesting interviews to date, so you're not going to want to miss this episode. I am talking with Karese Laguerre today, and she is a myotherapist, and we're going to talk about what that is and what that's about. It is like this new next level biohacking for everyone. If you struggle with energy, sleep deprivation, if you struggle to achieve your goals and your needs and desires because you feel like you're trapped in this lack of energy, sleep deprived haze of exhaustion, this interview is going to be something you want to listen to. Now, I want to take the time to introduce Karese because she has really an interesting background. And Karese, like many parents, has suffered in silence while her children struggled with symptoms of undiagnosed sleep and breathing issues. Now, one visit to a pediatric dentist changed the trajectory of their lives forever. Now, Karese is a trained registered dental hygienist, and she trained with Sandra Holtzman, Lois Linnae, and Sarah Hornsby to establish her oral facial myology knowledge. A lot of big words here. We're going to get into those, don't worry. With this initial training, in just a few short years, she has not only resolved all of her children's issues, but she has actually helped hundreds of children and adults discover how great life can be function on a full tank. Now, her private practice is called the Myo Spot. She is now a leader in the quest for myofunctional therapy, awareness, and public education. Her latest book, Accomplished, delves into how to sleep better, eliminate burnout, and execute goals. Karese's mission is to transform and positively impact as many households as possible through dynamic breath, brain, and body work. So it is of great pleasure today that Karese is on the show. This is just totally next level stuff, guys. So you're not going to want to miss this episode. Karese, thank you so much for coming on the Strong Moms Fitness Podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. And I specifically wanted you to come in and chat about your book, which is titled Accomplished: How to Sleep Better, Eliminate Burnout, and Execute Goals. And any person who is listening to this episode who doesn't need help in any of these areas. But before we jump into that, I would love for you to share a little bit more about your personal journey, your business, and how you got to where you are today.
Awesome. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here and happy to share. I originally started out as a registered dental hygienist. That's my original profession. And as a licensed dental hygienist, you think you know everything about the mouth and all there is to know about the face. And then it turns out I didn't know as much as I thought I knew. As a mom of four, they were really the impetus for everything shifting into where I am now. So as parents, and you probably experienced the same thing, when people say, "How are you?" or they're asking what's going, everything's good. Or you might give them the highlights of the career. Like the kids just made it to the soccer tournament. Yay. We don't really say a lot of the stuff that's actually going on, like the things that we're really struggling with. So I wasn't talking about the fact that my son had a lot of behavioral and impulse control issues, ADHD, was struggling through school. I didn't say that my oldest daughter had a lot of issues with everything you could think of under the sun, the night terrors, the sleepwalking, the bedwetting, like you name it, we've experienced it with her. And that was for 10 years straight, nightly routine. And then my last two daughters, they had a lot of issues where we were constantly on what my husband would have preferred was we just have keg on tap with the antibiotics because what we were living off of at that point in time, constant ear throat infection. So nobody's talking about that. I'm certainly not going to bring it up. Like, who needs to know all of that? It feels like I'm failing as a mother if I start sharing all of that. So I wasn't sharing any of that with anyone, but I was working for a pediatric dentist who was so heavily involved in overall wellness, not just the teeth and what was going on there. So she went beyond her dentistry and she really put a lot of the pieces together for me. And that really brought me into myofunctional therapy, which is what I do now. So I dove deep because once I saw the changes in my children and how I could help and impact others, it was a no-brainer for me. So that brought me all the way to where I am now. And I know I'm probably going to have to fill in some gaps between that and there. That brought me to where I am now doing myofunctional therapy in my private practice.
Cool. Awesome. I love that. What is myotherapy and how did you use it to fill in those gaps or those concerns or those issues that were going on with your family, with your children?
Great question. So I'm always having to explain myofunctional therapy. And I think the best way for me to explain it, or like the easiest way so that everybody can understand, is that it's like working with a personal trainer, but just for the muscles below the eyes and above the shoulders. So we're working with a lot of those oral facial and some of the oral pharyngeal muscles to help strengthen and coordinate them. This is going to help facilitate better breathing, chewing, swallowing, and a lot of which is critical. We can't really function really well as people without breathing. That's pivotal. That's all upper respiratory, this whole area. And then on top of that, our chewing and our swallowing, our digestive system, also critical. And sleep, all three, so pivotal in just daily function. So a lot of that was impacting what was going on, specifically the ADHD and the sleep issues that my older two had. Those were definitely upper respiratory issues with obstructive sleep apnea and an inability to just properly oxygenate, which strengthening and coordinating these muscles did help to relieve a lot of those issues. And then the younger two with the throat infection, the ear infections, everything's all connected. And so it really did help to clear up a lot of that for them.
Wow, that's mind blowing. I have more questions now. So, myotherapy there, what does an appointment look like or what does a consult look like? What's happening during a session?
So when we get together for the first time, it's always just a consultation. We'll talk about what you might be struggling with, and I am able to gauge whether or not it's really something working with the oral facial muscles might help out with. Once we get into an evaluation, then we're talking about me looking at all of the oral facial function. So there's over 100 muscles it comprised of our face, making us do various motions. So whether we're trying to smile or laugh or just pull back your cheeks, or there's so many muscles that are moving things in different ways. I look at all those muscles. I look at what's working well, what's working overly hard, what's not working well. And then I put together a plan for where we need to go. And then if you were working with a personal trainer at the gym, I'm going to target those muscles. We're going to try to isolate them using various tools and tricks. And we'll do little exercises that for some may seem like very small, but for others, like just extending your tongue could be an issue. Just getting it to come out straight and independent in isolation, separate from your jaw, could be a very big issue.
I just want to stick out my tongue now.
Be surprised. It's these things that people don't really talk about that they actually do with various tasks that just have to do with their face.
That's so wild. Now, I can understand how the facial muscles come into play with things like breathing and how we're eating and digesting. What's that link there with ADHD? And I know a lot of moms here do have kids that's either themselves or their kids struggle with ADD. What's that link there?
So what's interesting with ADHD is that it's really not a diagnosis that you can get a definitive answer for. You can't do a blood test and say, oh, yes, it's definitely ADHD. It's all based off of symptoms. So, being a symptom based diagnosis, we have to look at where there are other possibilities. What could these symptoms also be arising from? There's actually an over 70% overlap in the research of the symptoms of ADHD and of sleep disorders in children. So when you have a 70% overlap in symptoms and you have something that you cannot test for definitively, it would seem like the next best thing to do would be to test for the thing you can definitively either rule out or say that yes, it is. So a lot of times with these children, when they're sleep deprived, they're not oxygenating, they're not getting adequate sleep, it's the exact opposite reaction that adults might have. So you and I, when we're tired, we'll drag. You feel like you're just pulling yourself through the day. You need your coffee. You have to get something to pick you up. Kids get wired. Kids get wired when they're tired. They're moving their body. They can't slow down. They can't get it to calm down. So you get that hyperactivity, that inability to remain attentive at all times because they just can't focus. They're so sleepy.
Wow, that's really enlightening. So, in your experience, have you helped some kids or individuals diagnosed with ADHD with the help of myotherapy? Have you helped individuals maybe get off medications? Is that like a possibility for myotherapy?
Absolutely a possibility. I've lived through it. That was one of the most rewarding things that I was able to do first at home with my son because we struggled with that. And I know a lot of other moms who have struggled with that too. Because first there's that denial when the kindergarten teacher's telling me that he can't pay attention. I'm like, but he's five. 5-year-old pay attention. I don't think so. But then as he's getting older and you're like, no, and then you accept it, but you're like, okay, we're not going to medicate. We'll change the diet. We'll do this, we'll do that. And then that stuff's not working. Then you get into the medication and oh, it's such a tough point. So it was very rewarding. Yes, it is a possibility and it's very rewarding. And it's one of my favorite things to be able to do. It's to work with these families to address the sleep issues so that you can present what is almost a new child. Like my son is night and day from who he was at that point in time. It was like meeting him for the very first time, him being able to function on full, meeting him at his best spot.
That's wild. Now, when you are working with a patient, how quickly do your patients start to see some progress, some evolution, some improvement?
Many times I work with people weekly. So we'll meet once a week, 30, 40 minutes, and we do exercises, and then they have to go home and work on those. And oftentimes my programs are about 14 to 16 weeks. So roughly I'll say you'll start to see changes around 3, 4 months, and we'll pretty much be rounding it out at 4 or 5 months.
Wow, that's unbelievable. Now, I wanted to have you on because of your book, and I wanted you to talk a little bit about your book. And from what it seems like, this can be applied to adults, it can be applied to helping your children also. Can you talk about like your inspiration for your book?
I am obsessed with the book too. It is a compilation of a bunch of things. So first it started with my family and the things that I was able to achieve and overcome with my kids. But then the things I was noticing that my clients were overcoming, things that I didn't even realize we could achieve with adults. And it really just became me sharing a simple way. So it's a 4-step process, my care plan. I share in a simple way how you can get to the point where you are sleeping better, where you can eliminate burnout, where you can be ready to execute goals, because that's our overall thing. We are always trying to become accomplished in various ways. We as people are always looking for accomplishment. And that's in getting these small little achievements that you will reach that point of accomplishment. And so it's very important that I shared that in the book and made it as simple and as straightforward as possible, because a lot of times people try a lot of different tricks and things. It doesn't always work out. But once you get to the root of the problem and you're dealing with the function, what's going on up here, what's going on in your upper respiratory, because this is what's really going to guide your sleep. Once you improve that function, that's when you're going to get actual true restorative sleep and you can reach peak productivity.
Very cool. And the intro was just so real and a really beautiful like perspective. And you talk about your struggle as a young single mom. Can you talk about how that was like a pivotal moment in your life and how that fueled some change for you?
Absolutely. absolutely. Being very young and pregnant at 18, I had it. So I got pregnant at 18. And then at 9 months, I was still 18. I got pregnant and had him at 18. And it was such a hard time, like a rough time, because you can imagine you're young. I'm missing out on college and I'm not getting to do what all of my friends are doing and so forth. And at home, I'm like, home life was also rough too, because now my parents are highly upset, incredibly disappointed, but don't miss out on any opportunity to let me know that. And that I just interpreted in my own mind as like, okay, they're not going to help me. I'll have a roof over my head, but I have to take care of this child. And in doing that solo at 18, it was hard. It's hard as a grown person, married, having a household. It's hard to figure all that out. But as an 18-year-old with just the one baby and just waiting weeks until I would even ask for help, can somebody just watch it so I can take a shower? I just knew that this could not be the way that other people were getting by. There's no way, because other people would have to be doing something smarter. So it was a general push for me to try to figure out how I can be my most productive. How can I get things done? And it was very helpful actually to have had that so early on, because I did learn multitasking in a new way. I was able to get through and do college while being a mother, being alone and trying to juggle between having a job and daycare and da da da. You do have to actually get well rested so that you can be at your optimal state of awareness and mind frame. Otherwise, you're not going to make it through any of these days. It's so long. The days are so long.
Yes, I totally agree with that. Now, can you elaborate on the differences between what you define as an accomplishment versus an achievement to our listeners, and how that not only relates as a mother and getting all your things done as a mom, but you as yourself, as a woman with needs and desires, goals? What are the differences there?
Absolutely. So when you would think about something that you would have as a goal, right? Typically people try to make goals really big and hefty. I want to lose 50 pounds. How are you going to get to that goal of 50 pounds? And then what are the steps you have to take along the way? How are you going to break it down? Because just saying 50 pounds isn't going to actually get you there. So maybe you want to lose 2 pounds. Now that's something you can monitor that. You can go through that. Those little micro goals will get you to that big goal. And that's really where we're going to break down achievements, which would be those little micro goals. You lost 2 pounds this first week. You lost 3 pounds the week after that. Achievements towards that accomplished, which would be that big micro goal, macro goals where you're trying to get to that 50 pounds. You make it to 50 pounds. You have accomplished something. You put together a bunch of little achievements and you made it to your big goal. That would be the big discerning factor for me, is that our achievements are going to be something that's going to get us to the point where at the end, that culmination of achievements is our accomplished.
Cool. Now, so tying in the myotherapy with this desire for goals and accomplishments, we do have these to-do lists, things that are for us, things that are for our families. How, I guess, is myotherapy the missing key for a lot of people? Is it what bridges the gap with these busy days? Does it help us optimize our energy while we're grinding towards these accomplishments? Is that the missing link? Can that be our saving grace?
It can absolutely be your saving grace, because at the end of the day, it's all going to come down to oxygenation. That's the prime thing that much of our bodies are running on. And you can even look at it in performance and research, where you look at the athletes that train and they have good optimal oxygenation, nasal breathers predominantly, and not mouth breathing, nasal breathing, they will perform better. The myofunctional therapy is really going to teach you how to use these muscles so that you can optimize your function. We want our nasal breathing to be really good, but you really don't put together the whole fact that our body is one. Our mouth is not just the mouth, it's actually the floor of our nose. And so when which actually does have a place that it's supposed to rest, nobody knows that. Everybody's always like mind blown by that. But our tongue is actually supposed to rest up against that palate that reaches the mouth. When it's resting up there, it's stimulating your vagus nerve. It's helping to shape and sustain the floor of the nose, which is going to allow you to use and optimize your nasal breathing really well. So our nose was designed wonderfully for breathing. It filters the air, it warms it, and it will increase your uptake of nitric oxide, which which is going to allow that blood to be able to bring in the oxygen. And you can really get that oxygen throughout the body and really get it to where it needs to be up in our head. We need that for our brain function. We're not going to get everything that we can out of our brain as far as performance when we're not oxygenating. We need that good stability of gray matter. And that gray matter is how we process thoughts. That's how we organize things. That gray matter is very important in us being able to be the critical thinking, wonderful people that we are. And so if we're not oxygenating well, we're going to impair our ability to sustain that gray matter as long as we can. We're definitely not going to get the sleep that we can so that our brain can process all of those thoughts for the day, retain and restore. We are going to have a very poor overall performance. So myofunctional therapy comes in handy in helping us to get everything optimal so that we can breathe right and intake, and then the rest all falls into.
Interesting. Now, I live at altitude. I live at probably about 8,000 feet, and I often go up to 11,000. And I often feel sick and tired and unwell. Are there ways by using like myotherapy, can I like biohack something to ensure that I am getting better oxygenation? I find, especially if I'm out biking, I get very winded easily. Is that something that myotherapy can assist in?
Absolutely. It's definitely going to help. And you definitely need some adjunctive too. So I would definitely say buteyko breathing is something that's come up and come about and is very, very good for a lot of that. So what that would really do is now we're working on a controlled pause, is you being able to sustain a breath hold, control the amount of carbon dioxide that you're retaining and build up some of that nitric oxide so that you can now facilitate better oxygenation and biohack, for lack of a better word, and biohack your breathing in that way. But I would definitely use the musculature that we would do for the myofunctional therapy to be your foundation to be able to get to a lot of those goals with that beauty.
I'm assuming that so this also works with high level athletes or endurance athletes. I'm thinking like adventure racers that are going forever and oxygen is really their lifeblood. They need that. So that is really interesting how that can relate to performance. Now, everyone's wearing masks right now, even young children. Are you finding that the mask wearing is going back? You're seeing more ADD now because of this decreased oxygen and things like that? Or is that just am I just going off on a weird tangent here?
Not going off on a weird tangent, it is something that is starting to be concerning, especially for a lot of the people who are actively working, these essential workers, the people who are wearing the mask for long periods of time. So it's not impacting the greater portion of society who's getting the benefit of working from home and not having to wear a mask, but the people who are actively out and in the field and wearing masks all day long, you're seeing more of the mouth breathing because you can't possibly sustain that nasal breathing under a mask for 8 to 10 hours a day. It's going to be something that you're going to find, I think, in the future has had a negative impact on our overall oxygenation. So we're having a lot of issues where there are people experiencing more of the mouth breathing. The dental offices, especially a lot of the ones that do state that a lot more patients are coming in and they're complaining about smelling their breath. Why is that? Because they're just constantly in this mask, rebreathing their breath all the day long. So I think that absolutely it is going to have a negative impact. I think in the long run, we'll see it as studies come out that whatever happened in 2020 and 2021 did have a negative impact on those people in 2025, 26. And
it's very interesting. It's almost like myotherapy is patching up holes in a bucket almost. Like it's part of the whole as opposed to thinking of ourselves as individual portions of the body. In your book, you talk about your care method, and I want you to elaborate a little bit more of that. Is that something that you designed yourself? Is it something that you've evolved from other people's theories and things like that? And how did that care method in turn lead to things like the achievement, the accomplishment, the reducing things like burnout and reaching your goals?
I love that. What a great question. So the care method is going to be that 4 steps that's going to help you get to our overall goal of accomplishment. We want to get to these achievements. And in order to do that, we have to get every night our optimal rest. How can you do that? We're going to break down each of the letters, the CARE. So C is going to be for consistency. Consistency is incredibly important because C is going to relate exactly to another C, your circadian. We have to be consistent with what we're doing when we're planning on going to bed. If you go to bed at 8 o'clock today, and then you go to bed at 11 tomorrow, and then maybe you go to bed at 1 in the morning and then back to 9 o'clock, it's all over the place. Your body can never really adjust. We need to have routines. As people, our body does have its own internal, we can't just go off of what's going on because there's a whole lot of blue light and things that are emitted that are going to throw off that clock. So if you can be as consistent as possible, we will find that we will see better results as far as you being able to sustain a good circadian rhythm, getting down to bed at the appropriate time. You'll be able to wake up and feel refreshed the next day because eventually your circadian flow established. And I don't think we talk about it routines enough. And I talk about this in the book, but I don't think we talk about routines enough when it comes to adults because as moms, we know the importance. It's almost drilled into us. The importance when the kids are young and the babies, you have to establish a routine. They need routine, but that doesn't go away just because they aren't babies or toddlers anymore. We still need routine, so that's our C, consistency. Pick a bedtime, try to stay with it as consistently as possible. A, airway management. Very important. We've talked about oxygenation several times. Oxygenation is going to be critical to you getting the appropriate sleep that you need to get to. That's how you're going to cycle through all your sleep stages appropriately. That's how you're going to be able to maintain that brain activation as you are sleeping. The brain is probably the only thing that's on overdrive, working more than it has during the daytime than any other organ. A lot of our other stuff shuts down while we sleep. Our brain is overactive, getting itself ready for the next. So airway management is going to be establishing a nasal hygiene routine or working with a myofunctional therapist or dealing with however it is that you're going to be able to optimize your oxygen intake. So nasal hygiene routine, just to pick the easiest one for your listeners, your nasal hygiene routine can simply consist of a saline rinse or a neti pot. And a lot of people like this neti pot that you're going to essentially flush out the nose. You're going to get rid of a lot of the mucus and so forth. And then once your airway has been cleaned, then you're going to open it up. So I usually recommend some type of aromatherapy. A lot of people are into the essential oil blends. The essential oil blend, as long as it's got some form of eucalyptus and or peppermint, you're going to be really good for clearing up that nasal passage. So make sure you're doing something to open it up so that your nose is prepped and ready to uptake as much oxygen as possible. So that's your airway management, your A. R is relaxation. Like I said previously, our brain is the only thing that's going to be hyperactive as we are sleeping. Everything else starts to shut down. So to get yourself into an appropriate level of stage 1 sleep, to get you ready to go all the way down into sleep, you've got to relax. You've got to shut things down and give yourself some time full into sleep. So you can't just, okay, I'm going to shut down the computer and hop into bed and just fall asleep. That's not the way that works. Your brain's still heavily stimulated. So pick something that's going to be nice and relaxing and soothing for you as an individual and relax your way into bed. That's going to put you right into, as long as you're consistently starting your nighttime routine at the same time, managing your airway beforehand and relaxing, you should fall into your best sleep. E is going to be efficiency. So you will wake up and efficiently use your newfound energy. Okay, so you wake up well rested. You're not waking up feeling groggy, tired, or like you didn't get a good night's sleep. You're waking up feeling like, oh, wow, I feel really refreshed. Expose yourself to some sort of sunlight. Usually that's really good early in the morning. If you wake up very good early, you might catch the sunrise. Really red light that's emitted from the sun when it comes up for the first hour or so of the sunrise. You'll be able to expose yourself to that. And it really wakes you up and it starts up a lot of that natural, it's activating mitochondria in your cells and it's really waking you up essentially. So we want to efficiently get that day started. If we have accountability partners, for us to Get in contact with an accountability partner. This is going to help you with that achievement. And you're trying to figure out what it is that your goal is for the day, or maybe you're working towards your weekly achievement. Hit up your accountability partner first thing in the morning. Good morning. I'm looking forward to just getting the laundry done today. Yay. That's such a big win. Mom win. I look forward to getting the laundry done today. I'll check in with you later. And later on in the day, check in again. At least that you've started your day off with your intention and they're well put out there into the universe, and you'll be all set to start achieving.
Cool. I like that. And I've got a couple questions from that. So many moms, the backbone of their routine somewhat okay. But a lot of moms and myself suffer from an overactive or racing mind at bedtime. You're thinking about what you didn't do, what you need to do, what you have to do tomorrow. Do you have any tips? Like, how do we turn this brain off?
If you're struggling to turn your mind off, typically I suggest that you would put those thoughts somewhere. So a lot of times that's where I would have like brilliant thoughts and, oh my gosh, this sounds phenomenal. Like I need to get that done next week, or I need to tell so and so about this new thing I thought of. If you can put those thoughts somewhere, your brain can turn them off because they've been put aside, right? So I keep a little notebook by my bed, or you can always, if you have your phone by you, use a voice note, record whatever those thoughts are, let it go. Once you put it out there and you've got it somewhere and it's set aside, a lot of times you'll find that there's no reason to think about it anymore. It's in the notebook.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And you also mentioned in your book barriers that exist to destroy our productivity even before it begins. Can you introduce some of these barriers and explain how they're affecting our health and our productivity?
Absolutely. So there's physical barriers and there's psychological barriers. Those psychological barriers are those self-limiting things, like those negative beliefs you may have. It might be just your own traumas that you haven't overcome. It might be any number of psychological things that are really just keeping you frozen in a moment in time, not allowing you to move past them. So you're repeating the same patterns you're making, or maybe repeating the same mistake. We're trying to achieve something, but we can't really get any progress towards it because we're just limited by these psychological barriers. But then there's the physical barriers. So some of these are physiological, where you might have a deviated septum. Maybe that's why you optimize your breathing, because you just can't adequately get a breath through the nose. Maybe you're struggling with something as far as it could be a tongue tie that's going to impair your tongue from being able to connect up to that roof of the mouth, like I spoke earlier. You won't be able to stimulate that vagus nerve. You could have issues just functionally doing things. So there's physical barriers and those psychological barriers are going to be big blockades that are going to impair you from getting any sort of progress, no matter what you're doing. So you could be doing all the things, whether you are biohacking or you're doing your own sort of process, whatever it is, or you could just be trying to do the care process and you're just not getting anywhere. I think that's when it's time to look back and to see, are there some physical barriers that I'm having to overcome? Do I have to check in with the doctor and see what's going on? Why can't I oxygenate properly? What's going on with my sleep? What's going on with the ability or the inability that I have to really get to the next level? Same thing with the psychological. Many times, if it's just limiting beliefs, you might be able to work with a mindset coach or work with somebody who is able to help you overcome those. Other times, you might need to seek out some more mental health in order to get over those hurdles. So not everything is going to be as cut and dry as you want to do this, and so therefore it gets done. Sometimes you really do have to dig deep and look into what are the physical and psychological barriers that might be in your way that'll prevent progress.
Wow, that is mind blowing. That links very well to your care method there. And I really appreciate you sharing that with us. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about sleep deprivation, because if there is one thing that most mothers suffer from, it is definitely sleep deprivation. How do you work with moms over kids? How do you help them stop that cycle of sleep deprivation?
The first thing to know is that it's not going to be something that we're essentially playing catch up on. So a lot of people think that, okay, if I go to bed really late this one night, I could just catch up on that sleep the next day. That's really not the way that the brain works, the body works. That's not the way that any of that works. What we're really looking to do is not to achieve what would be, I guess, the common thing, because common isn't always normal and or right. But the common thing is that 7 to 8 hours, that myth of that's how many hours we should be sleeping. If you're not sleeping 7 to 8 hours a night, that's okay. If you are sleeping 7 to 8 hours a night, that's okay. But the quantity of your sleep does not mean that you had good quality of sleep. So I think that the first step that I usually take, we're going to try to track and measure your sleep as it is currently. Are you actually cycling through your sleep stages? Are you waking up feeling refreshed? Are you having optimal sleep, even if you're only sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night? Not everybody needs to sleep for 7 to 8 hours. That's just an average. That does not have to be where every single person falls. So sometimes people think those hours, it means that they're not getting enough sleep, but you could be in your bed for 8 hours and wake up feeling terrible the next day. You definitely didn't get good sleep if you wake up and you don't feel refreshed. So we start by tracking the sleep and seeing where we are right now. Are we getting good sleep with a certain duration? Because then from there, what time do you want to wake? And then we need to backtrack that. So if 4 to 5 hours is all you need to be refreshed, you cycle through appropriately. We've been tracking the sleep for 1 to 2 weeks, and we know what is about appropriate for you and helping you be restored. 4 to 5 hours before you're hoping to wake up, that's when we're going to be looking to have you down into bed. And at least at the end of that hour, you consistently started your bedtime routine before your airway management was taken care of and your relaxation into bed. And then 4 to 5 hours from then is when you want to wake up. So we're looking to optimize the quality of sleep well over quantity whenever we're looking to address sleep deprivation.
Very cool. Now, do you help individuals that they go through the care method? They seem to be doing all the right things, but they're still suffering from poor sleep. How do you help people in that situation?
I don't think it's the care method at that point. Now, at that point, that's when we're looking at different things. That's when we're looking at those psychological barriers or those physical barriers. There's something else that's standing in the way. Something is impeding progress. And it's probably something that can't address on our own, whether it's me helping or just that person on their own trying to get this done. This is something that now we have to get some sort of medical or mental intervention in order to achieve anything at that point.
Wow, that is amazing. Karese, you just dropped so many knowledge bombs today. I appreciate you for coming on the show. You have such a big heart, and I want to thank you. I would love for you to take this time and let our listeners know how they can find you online. If someone wants to work with you, feel free to plug your book or let the ladies know how we can further get in touch with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciated being here. It's been so much fun. Anyone who's looking to get in contact with me can best do so through my website. On my website, I offer free 15-minute consultations. We go over what you're experiencing and if myofunctional therapy would be able to help you get to that next level and help you with your accomplishments. Just go to themyospot.com and you can book conveniently at a time there for you. If you want to connect with me on social media, many of my handles are at the Myospot. And then most importantly, Accomplished, a great book to read. It's Accomplished: How to Sleep Better, Eliminate Burnout, and Execute Goals. And it's available on Amazon in both a paperback or a Kindle version.
Love that. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to post all of your links that you had mentioned in our show notes so that our listeners can find you easily with just a couple clicks. I recommend the book to everyone looking to better themselves in maybe in a way that they never thought was actually possible. So I really want to thank you for taking your time and joining us on the Strong Moms Fitness Podcast. Yay! Guys, like whose mind hasn't been blown by my conversation today with Karese? When I secured the interview with Karese, this was before I read her book and very interesting. I really didn't know how this would all fit together for you guys and for the show. It really turned out to be such a fun interview with Karese, and it has opened a few rabbit holes for me. And I don't know if it's opening up a couple rabbit holes for you. I'm always interested in improving myself, my efficiency. I'm really into biohacking lately, and I feel like myotherapy might be a missing step in a lot of what I'm experiencing. So I'm sure you're probably like me. You're always tired, exhausted. You can't get through your list of things to do. And I feel like myotherapist might be on to something. So, guys, I really want to encourage you to go and check out her website and her program and either follow her on social because I think she's really onto something super important. Thank you for joining me and Karese today on this episode of the Strong Moms Fitness Podcast. And I also, before I let you guys go, I wanted to remind you of my newest postnatal corrective exercise fitness program, more like a method, a way to get you back into fitness after baby. If you're a new mom, or maybe you're not such a new mom, but you're struggling with things like leakage, diastasis, and prolapse, or if you're just someone that wants to get back to the gym safely after baby without injury, maybe you want to keep up with your kids, maybe you've realized that you've let your fitness go on the wayside since having a baby, or maybe COVID's gotten in the way of that also. This is a really great foundational program to help you with things like leakage, diastasis, prolapse, strengthen you from the inside out so that you can be the strongest mom possible, allowing you to bulletproof your body from the inside, strengthening that foundation. So I want you to check out my website, rebuildafterbaby.com. Talks all about the program, gives a little bit more details. Love for you to check it out and love for you to share it with your friends. So thanks again for joining me on the Strong Moms Fitness Podcast, and look forward to having another experience with you next week. Thanks so much.
Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you next time on the Strong Moms Fitness Podcast. Now remember, go subscribe so that you are the first to know as soon as new episodes drop. Also, be sure you don't miss out on your chance to win a free program of your choice from Strong Moms Fitness. All you have to do is leave a 5-star review. Screenshot it before you submit and send it to Daisy at strongmomsfitness.com. Your review helps other people find our show. And as a thank you, once a month we choose the review that makes us all warm and tingly inside and award that lucky lady a free program of their choice. So do it now. It could be you. See you next time, you badass mom, you.